Yes, thank you. Mr. Engineer, my friend Dushyant, a warrior par excellence. Unfortunately, the only grievance I have is that he stopped appearing in courts for people now. I think there's a level of frustration that got sent him. I am obviously a chair. I'm not going to repeat or de novo deal with a topic because Dushyant is covered like a panorama. But I want to use 10, 15 minutes to talk of the elephant in the room, which everyone knows but does not acknowledge is there. Oh, sorry. Is that better? Can you hear me? Yeah. Sorry. So what I said was...
Just a second.
I can hold it. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so this is fine then. So I said I want to use my 10 or 15 minutes to talk of an elephant.
So chair also always needs some help.
When I looked at this topic, the Constitution is envisioned and its contemporary interpretation, it is typical legalese. It doesn't say what I think it wants to say, and which is that look where we are today and what's gone wrong. And I think it's very important that we realize just what is happening under our noses. Dushyant has outlined a series of things which are wrong, but they are peripheral. I'm going to say this again. I believe there is something far more fundamentally wrong, and I want to deal with that in 5-10 minutes. See, what we have seen from 1950 to 2025 is a transition from a democratic secular republic to an ethnocracy, to a republic of faith, under the eyes of judges and constitutions. And let me tell you that the change which you are witnessing is so fundamental that many of us prefer not to see it, because it is something that gets very difficult to live with and very difficult to stop. Constitutions, my friends, are words. And words, as Humpty Dumpty said in Alice, mean what I say they mean. And they change color. And constitutions do not preserve liberty. They do not preserve rights. They do not preserve freedom. Only people and the institutions can support it. I'll tell you just for a minute. We used to venerate, I remember when we were in law college and earlier, this American Constitution, its liberality, its freedoms. The best riposte to that came from Justice Black, where he said that this great American Constitution which you venerate kept my people in slavery for 300 years. So constitutions don't give you freedom. They embody what you must stand and fight for. And when you do not, the words are hollow. And that is today's situation. I want to just take a few minutes because I think it's important. We must realize how dire the position is. India started out as a constitutional republic based on civic citizenship, domicile, birth. It expressly disavowed cultural or religious antecedents as a basis of citizenship because of the complexity of the country. It has so many religions, so many castes, so many creeds, so many languages. If you were to get that country moving, you had to accommodate it into a plural constitution which was secular. Secular not in the Western sense of separation from church and state, but secular in the sense of neutrality and equal treatment of all religions. That is the Indian ethos. That is the Indian constitution. And that is how we started out. But make no mistake, while we had this constitution in 1950, there was another view of the world in India at that time. And that was the Hindu Rashtra ideology. It's not something new. It was from the 30s. It started with Savarkar, it went on to Gorwalkar, and let us be clear what they said. They said, India is a Hindu country, is a Hindu nation based on Hindu religion and culture. And Gorwalkar went further where he said, because he talked to Muslims, Parsis are less than elephants in India, so they don't count. But if you look at it this way, what he said was, Muslims must entertain no idea but those of glorification of the Hindu race or culture, may stain the country, but wholly subordinated to the Hindu nation. Now, this was the rival view. In 1950, because of the likes of Gandhi, who died before that but was instrumental, Nehru, Ambedkar and Patel, we opted out of this view. And we put up a nation, a brave nation, for all its contradictions, which sought to bring in principles of secular republicanism. Nehru, as my friend said, was the greatest architect of this. And right up to the 1970s, actually, Nehruvian philosophy saved India. It was a muddle. There were errors made. But the ultimate factor of developing a secular republic was preserved. And that's very important. Then we have this uncomfortable period of Mrs. Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, who played with these words. They, I do not think, were true secularists. They also were using groups and seeking to set them off one against the other for power. The problem is then life always betters this sort of genius wisdom of individual politicians. Look at what happened. Rajiv Gandhi brought in the Muslim Women's Bill to get over the Supreme Court judgment. Then he suddenly realized there was a huge backlash. So he decided, well, let's be brilliant. We'll open the gates of the Babri Masjid. Does anyone know that the gates were locked from 48 till Rajiv Gandhi, in his infinite wisdom, managed to get some magistrate in UP to open it for him. And he started his campaign in Faizabad and talked of Ram Rajya, little realizing the monster he was creating. The political fallout led inevitably to the destruction of the Babri Masjid. But you must remember, the BJP did not think that Ayodhya was a very important thing. For almost 2 years, they did not take it as a target. Somewhere an epiphany struck them that this can be used for political mobilization, and they clambered onto the baggage. Just remember, I think at the time when the masjid was, or the Babri Masjid was demolished, the BJP had 3 members in parliament. We forget that. And also forget that the generality of views in India at that time, even after the demolition, was that it was a wrong thing. That was the general view. But look what happened in between. After the demolition of the Babri Masjid, Narasimha Rao, who I think was clearly culpable, there were those 4 hours where he was incommunicado while the masjid was being demolished. Because he was a brilliant man. He thought this will take care of the masjid and will allow me to demolish 4 state governments of the BJP. But such narrow-minded politics led to where we are today. When these 4 state governments were demolished by Narasimha Rao for supporting the Babri Masjid demolition, the Supreme Court in Bombay, 9 judges, laid down the highest pinnacle of secularism in India. And they went so far as to say, 10 minutes, I hope I'm not going to stretch now. Went so far as to say that a government which is non-secular deserves to be removed. No one ever thought what happened if the central government was non-secular. And who removes that? But that's the peculiarity of it. But shortly after that, remember what happened. The elections came in Bombay. The Shiv Sena especially campaigned heavily on Hindutva. The Bombay High Court struck down 12 of those elections, saying it is obviously a clear case of an attempt to use religion. It went to the Supreme Court. And in the Supreme Court, I think it was Justice Verma. He was sitting in Bomai as one of the 9 judges. When these appeals came up, he suddenly came out with this very interesting theory that Hinduism is a way of life. It's not a religion. And Hindutva is Hinduism. So that's also a way of life. So therefore, all these judgments of the Bombay High Court were reversed by Justice Verma. And there started the road to where we are today. Let's make no bones. The judiciary is culpable on 2-3 levels. 1, neglect and failure, and 2, actually enabling the situation we are in today. And they are intelligent men. They knew exactly what they were doing. I'm not ascribing motives, I'm looking at consequences. 2014, take it straight forward. The BJP now, I'm not going to the Vajpayee government because it was a different time. But 2014, the BJP comes to power on its own. And then follows a clear method of subversion of constitutional secularism and its replacement de facto by majoritarian ethnocracy. If we don't realize this, we are making a bigger mistake than the Germans made in 1933 and 34 when they saw the Weimar Republic collapse under us. And let me tell you something, gentlemen. It is common people who become the most dangerous in majoritarian governments. The Germans, when you look at them today, or you looked at them in 31, 32, didn't look the sort who would kill 6 million Jews. The Jews in Germany were the most educated, the scientists, the musicians, they were talented. But when nations are fed the madness of majoritarianism, sometimes called national socialism, sometimes called cultural nationalism, but it all means the same. You are using nationalism as a bogey boy to subvert nations. And that's what's happening under our noses. And our constitution no longer bears the sanctity it is. If I sound dismal, it is because the situation is dismal. Let me be very clear about it. Sorry, just 1 minute. My hands are not too great. Now, how has this happened? Just look at what's happened. From 2014 to today, the BJP does not have a Muslim legislator in parliament or even in the assemblies, I think. It just doesn't have it. You are seeing the virtual political exclusion of Muslims. It's so fundamental an issue. The Congress has a few, but the political role of the BJP is essentially the exclusion. And they have a simple answer. They say if we can mobilize the Hindus and we can make them vote for us, we don't need the Muslims. So let them vote against us. That's the way we are dealing with the situation. Then look at the total targeting of fraternization, which is even more frightening. Today, fraternization between Muslims and Hindus is almost dangerous. You get called love jihad. People come to your house. When you go to this under the Special Marriage Act and you have to announce a marriage, it's given to the local VHP or Bajrang Dal, who then come and make sure you can't get married. Where is fraternity today? Today, more and more, Muslims are being pushed into a corner and all interaction is being stopped. You can't put 20% or 14% of a country the size of India and with 200 million Muslims, with the second largest Muslim population in the world, into a corner. Somewhere this country will break if you take it too far. And then look at the last level. You pass all these laws in which you criminalize cattle slaughter, consumption and possession of beef. I see so many friends around us appalled at the lynching of Hindus in Bangladesh. Of course we should be. But what about the fact that more Muslims are being lynched in India for not saying Jai Shri Ram, for carrying beef? Does it not shock the conscience of people? What I'm more worried about is not our leaders, but I'm worried about our acceptance by the people to such things. Our acceptance by the people to the erosion of our democratic, secular, republic values. People and friends and colleagues say things I could never believe they would say. And when the political system becomes permissive, you then hear things you never heard before. This is almost frightening. And look at how this has happened. There is and was in the last 20 years a relentless propaganda blitz. It extols cultural nationalism and strength. Operation Sindoor, this, that. We must be strong. It only requires you to go out of the country to realize just how strong or how weak we are. I'm not saying we should not try to be strong, but strength is not muscle power. Strength is a nation united and working well together. That is the strength. This sort of strength is the type of strength which was shown when the Nazis took Czechoslovakia and they did this and everyone was so proud. You know, bus conductors in 1934 in Germany used to act like they were generals because they were all so proud of things. But this is like riding the tiger. At some stage it has to eat you up or it has to be eaten. Then the most problematic situation is equality and secularism has been treated as appeasement. And that is the most terrifying factor. If you support minority rights in any way, that's appeasement. If you go on the other side, that's astha. Look where we've come. We are today in a republic of faith and ethnocracy. Today, people justify everything by religion. And when you can't use the word religion because it might affect the constitution, you use culture. Culture today is a synonym and a face saver for religion. You can't say religious nationalism, so you say cultural nationalism. It is exactly this which our founding fathers wanted to prevent. Because when you have culture as the basis of a nation, culture necessarily with religion belongs to the dominant factor in that. And if you once allow culture to be the denominator, the nation is going to be in trouble. If you remember, I don't know, some days ago, months ago, Darius Kambata, who was then once an Advocate General, wrote, and I quote him, he said, "These methods are not new. The Nazis brainwashed the Germans with propaganda, adopting Joseph Goebbels' doctrine of the big lie. They recalibrated the truth and history, demonized the Jews as being neither German or human, and accused the Weimar Republic of appeasement," the same word. Even after the Nuremberg citizenship laws were passed in 1933, Germans kept thinking, well, this is not really so bad. It's not going to get... Don't forget the first concentration camp set up in Germany was in Dachau, and it was meant for Germans and not for Jews. It was meant for socialists. It was meant for leftists. It was meant for pastors. When majoritarian politics starts, it eats up everything in its way. And you are at the threshold when its appetite is really being whetted. So my purpose here is just saying how frightening the situation is. And while we live our little lives and we hope the storm will pass over us, I don't think it will. And either we realize the seriousness and push back in whatever way we can, or this storm will engulf us. I don't know. I'm obviously not going to take much more time, but I only want to say this, that look at the cynicism of this. All this is being done with the Constitution using the same words. But the words are hollow. And the Constitution has no meaning unless the institutions, the judiciary, the election commission, the CAG, and the people give it that support. You look at America today, it has this great constitution, but a majoritarian leader who says make America great again, really means make America white again, is doing exactly what Mr. Modi is doing here. At least there is some pushback there, but probably they had 200 years. We only have 50 years or 60 years, and our constitution floats on water. It doesn't have depth in the people. So, I'm sorry if I've overstayed my welcome, but I wanted to say that this is a very, very crucial matter. And what is more frightening than what is happening is the ability to not see what's happening. Because it's too difficult to deal with. So we live our comfortable lives by hoping it won't come home to us. But it always does. And either we find some way of dealing with this, of going back to the real constitutional values, or you are at the beginning of a storm, and you might not be like Louis XIV said, after me the storm. It might get you while you're alive. Thank you.
Very well
Oh
said.
boy, did he really address the elephant in the room? Yes. Thank you so much for so eloquently speaking really about the transition, the fundamental change in our democracy and the very frightening transition that has taken place. I think these very sharp chair remarks has really got us thinking, and I think together the speaker and the chair have opened up, I think, a lot of questions in us. So I guess we